Yeah.
I am your main connection to the switchboard of souls. I'm the magic man.
Good morning.
Christmas rocks.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, you wonderful Billy and Lone.
Tony Caravan.
You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what you don't.
If you're really Santa Claus, you can get it for me. And if you can't, you're only a nice man with a white beard, like Mother said.
Okay.
Oh, no!
It's the holiday season.
Yeah. It's the holiday season. Never-ending story. Like that kid on that oversized thing that looked like a dog, basically. Never-ending story. Remember that? Watch out when you were a kid or an adult or whatever. I don't know. It's crazy out there. The title of this story is Agitprop 2, or To the Second Power. You understand that? Used to know a guy who looked like this. You ever know anybody who looked like that? How am I supposed to have a serious show with this girl with this tremendous cleavage smoking a cigarette and doing something like this?
This is really funny. Really funny.
Yeah, I know. However, that said...
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
All right, let's get into this thing. You know, the show is really going to be taking a major transition in the coming, I say within 30 days, tops. If you heard that slurp, it's already started. Let's take a look here.
The Weather Watch forecast.
Now, suddenly all these weird bird boomerang things have been released on the former United States. Actually, this is a different NOAA. It's from the satellite. But what it is it's showing wind. And since we've been having these wind events, which really are quite frightening and I think much more scarier than anything else they've been throwing at us. And I do mean that they have been throwing things at us over the past, well, you're familiar with the past 2 years, but probably for at least the past 500 years. Today's the 13th of December, 1521. Yes, 1521. Look at that circulation over in the northwest in the Pacific right now. You see that? That's crazy, man. That's really crazy. And look at this crazy, insane, all right, atmospheric wind. You know, we'll be kind of lucky if we make it to 2046. 2046 is when the sun novas, you know. But we'll be lucky if we make it that long. I was thinking about that the other night. It's 34 degrees. I'm in the mid-Atlantic states right now. It's 34 degrees outside. Before it's all said and done, as weather people say, meaning before sunrise, which is at 7:29 this morning, it's going to be freezing, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 degrees Celsius. Though it's going to be a sunny day and get to a high as 40, but the overnight will be below freezing. Tuesday, it's supposed to maybe go up to 50. We're supposed to have this little heat wave. Heat wave meaning in this time of year is like the temperature inside your fucking refrigerator. Sorry to start with the F so quickly, but anyway, there you go.
The Weather Watch forecast.
Blammo. Here we go. You know? And yeah, he shouldn't have said that naughty word.
Oh, no!
Naughty, naughty, word.
Oh,
You got it. What do you think of it, honey?
Okay.
She doesn't care. She likes that stuff. Talk dirty to me, baby. Talk dirty to me, baby. Give me what I want. Smoking's allowed in my bar. All right, anyone who tuned in here because they thought, this guy said some interesting things the past couple shows, but now suddenly he's starting off really weird. It's 4:36 in the morning. I've probably only been up for about an hour, kind of up, out of bed. Cat was bothering me again. I see what's wrong. Turn the wrong light on. I was wondering why the thing was making noises. This on-air light hasn't taken it down to past 100% in the past month. But that little night light that I just turned off took it down to 99%. I mean, it's still not a big deal because you you put a night light on one of these things and carry it from room to room if the power's out, and then plug a lamp into it or something like that. You could also plug in this thing that I use to heat my coffee warmer because it's only 17 watts, and that thing's 240 watts. You can get them 1,000 watters or more. And my advice with the things that are going on with the wind, did you see some of those pictures from Kentucky and some of those other places? Over 100 people dead. Frickin' wind. That has nothing to do with CO2. And those like cluster of volcanoes off the coast of off the west coast. It's nothing to do with CO2, right? And a couple of weeks ago we had a bunch of solar stuff going on, had nothing to do with CO2, what happens on the sun. And subsequent earthquakes and some other things that happened due to that, nothing to do with CO2, 0.0 CO2. But we're in kind of a pickle, all right? We've got Dr. Beth here, right? Ms. Bubbly, whatever, and Nassim, the physicist, who's about to release a paper on 2/22/22. Okay, look at her. She's a happy-go-lucky thing. I've been watching a lot of her stuff lately, though. You have to take everything with a grain of salt. Everybody's got ideas. You try to listen to them all, figure it all out. And it's a complex existence that we have. That it's easy to say that. It's like you'll never know what you don't know is the title of today's show. And I put up a chat that says our history was erased. Okay. But it's like they have a thing here where you can pick the emoji skin tone. I mean, the things that we're focused on right now are really, are quite absurd. Really quite absurd. And it's like, even in something like me here, we could go back, we could turn this into black and white, right? This show. Or we could go crazy, crazy bright, do some kind of U shift, put me in the green zone, do all kinds of weird, wild and crazy things. And then wonder if we could ever get back to where we actually were. I could actually make myself somewhat invisible and kind of almost fade into the background. Right? We could mess with the gamma and darken things up. Or we could brighten things up to a point that you've never seen where you can actually see the Mulder studio. Then we can try to bring these colors back, add a little bit of saturation in, which brightens up the room, gives you a better view of things. But now that I'm back, from my standpoint, it kind of looks the same. But the idea is that you don't know what you don't know. And more important than that is, changing the skin tone on your emoji. Then what? Yeah, I'm starting to think that that's the most important shirt I have. Even more so almost than you don't know what you don't know, but game over and everything. You know is wrong and freedom is fun and all that stuff. And, of course, the holiday shirt. You get the ROCKFLUX logo on a shirt. It does look kind of funky back there with that weird, eerie red glow, though. Right? So maybe let's just try to get rid of a little bit of the red if we can. Video capture device. How did we get so much red there? Was it a U shift? No, because saturation, gamma. It just seems to be a little bit too much red. But when I go otherwise, it looks like I'm Spock. You know? I don't know. I guess we're stuck with it. Yeah.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
I said this before a long time ago. And I think a lot of people have already said this. I mean, obviously. Things have gotten completely, totally out of control. It looks like I have zit on my face or something. I don't know what the heck's going on. I ate a lot of chocolate lately. I think I break out from chocolate. No, that's annoying. Who cares? Vanity, night and day, you torture me. It's a song I made up based upon another song called Jealousy, which I didn't write. But things are completely out of control. Right? I mean, when I say we don't know if, people say, I'm not the only one that says it. People don't know what's up is down and down is up and everything's inside out and all that kind of stuff. It's crazy. Where's Boozilla when you need him? I was much happier when I was drinking all the time. Right? How about this?
People, you sit there, you're in for one big surprise. People, you sit there, you're in for one big surprise. People, you sit there, you're in for one big surprise.
That's true, man. The Then What hoodie girl's like trying to take over the Christmas hoodie girl. All right, let's get back into this thing. Let's go through some of the goofy stuff that we're not going to talk about much longer. I mean, I wasn't even going to put it up today, but I just put it up for the hell of it. Just to demonstrate Bitcoin, this is the monthly Bitcoin chart. Bitcoin's down again. Yesterday it was 23 and change, percentage-wise down. Now it's that. But Bitcoin literally has lost. I've watched Bitcoin lose, a ton. But, $15,000 on a Bitcoin in 1 month is pretty much of a loss. But like I was trying to explain yesterday, in reality, people have lost, upwards of like $18,000 to $20,000 on one Bitcoin. And if you have a fraction thereof and you're some kind of trader, forget it, man. And besides, it's digital currency. It's now being traded and is on the futures market, and that courts are getting involved with, and things like that. In other words, it's a fucking fiat currency. And there's probably people out there, that's impossible. It's not. You don't understand. You don't even know how it works. I know how fucking Bitcoin works because I was mining Bitcoin pretty much before any of you fucking dumb fucks knew about it. Just like I was mining Litecoin and Dogecoin and all those other ones. All right? I actually have a fraction of Bitcoin, because I was one of the first guys to have a certain software and set up an account somewhere, and because they were trying to get people to set up certain accounts and stuff, they were giving out fractions of Bitcoin. The point of the matter is, no, it's you'd be better off having paper dollars for, if you even needed paper. I don't even know what you fucking needed paper dollars for. Man, this house of cards is falling down so fast that it's crazy. Okay, so let's look at, I'm not going to do this stuff anymore either, but I had to put this up because this is ridiculous. Fox News, now this isn't Fox, this is some other fucking, I forget who it is. I don't know why their name didn't show up, but it's one of those weird, idiotic places. Let's see if it shows up on my history here. It's, what the heck are they? News. These people don't even know how to put the title of their news in their website for search. That's how dumb people are now. Anyway, it's one of those Johnny-come-lately news things. Okay, doesn't even say it underneath this whoever is AJ McDougal is. Doesn't even. Do you see the name of the place here? I don't. Isn't that ridiculous? It's not called Cheat Sheet. It's one of those things they quote all the time. One of these stupid Johnny-come-lately places. Breaking News Intern, I guess, reported this. Fox News releases icy statement on Chris Wallace's departure for CN. Fox has released a frigid statement on veteran Fox Sunday host Chris Wallace for CNN News streaming platform CNN Plus. Wallace, 74. The guy's 74. I didn't even know he was that old. Said he was ready for a new adventure at this end of his regular broadcast Sunday. The network statement on Wallace's departure read in full, "We are extremely proud of our journalism and the stellar term that Chris Wallace was a part of it for 18 years. Chris Wallace. First of all, I can't believe he's 74. I thought he was like 24 or something. Right? I mean, now you look at his neck and his jowls, I guess you could figure he's an old fart. But the point of the matter is the guy already was a far left freakazoid, whatever the fuck. Who even cares? So this is CNN's plan to get their ratings up. And this will be the talk of Tim Pool and Joe Rogan and I guess people like that today. And probably even some of those cooler people that unfortunately talk about the news and say, "Oh, so you put it on." Yeah, I'm putting it on as social criticism because I'm against politics as pop culture. I'm trying to demonstrate how politics is pop culture. In other words, the news, what I'm trying to get at here is how many times have I done this? And in fact, within the past couple of weeks, this is the second one in just 2 weeks where the news has made the news, right? News people are on the news. And you don't understand when I talk about politics as pop culture and the news as pop culture. In other words, it's this thing, it's this circus where it's about them. It's like Hollywood, right? It's like starstruck stuff where they talk about stars. They call them stars or something. And people are interested in their hey, Jay-Z's, did this thing. Somebody else, did something. It's like, who gives a shit, man? Listen to their song, watch their freaking movie or TV show, or if you're into the news, tell us the news. The news isn't about the news presenter. A movie is not about the actor. You're right? A song is not about the artist. I mean, for crying out loud. People just don't get it. But I don't want to talk about pop culture because I think there's more serious things to talk about than that. And even if this show survives or this planet survives, I mean, what we're seeing going on right now, now forget about the thing and all these absurdities and like the news being the news and these pharmaceutical, big pharma trying to like pull the wool over, the entire world's eyes. Like they did in 19, what was it, 17, 18, or whenever it was before. This isn't the first time they've done this. All right? When they were trying to make a change then and bring in the Federal Reserve, put in the Federal Reserve System. These people copy the same playbook all the time. And the problem is people are they wait. All I know is these people have extremely long lifespans, apparently. Or they've got these books and they teach stuff well to their, progenitors. Excuse me. I'm sorry, guys.
This is really funny.
Right? It's ridiculous. Progenitor, a person or thing from which a person, animal, or plant is descended or originates, an ancestor or parent. His sons and daughters were the progenitors of many of Scotland's leading noble families. Just wanted to explain that word progenitor for somebody who was more concerned about the color of their emoji, the color of the face of their emoji. But anyway, yeah, so these people's progenitors, they pass this stuff down. Or it's in books and stuff like that. This is the whole concept. Like if people, the thing they call secret societies and stuff like that. Like I say, most of this stuff is just passed on knowledge. And it's not as secret. I mean, there are those that will argue that point. Okay, there are people out there that just like, the Masons and the Illuminati, this is like, And the thing about it is, like in any given thing, it's like, I'm not going to get into an argument with you because I'm going to not get into an argument with anybody about anything. But the idea is that I tried to touch on this yesterday, and I thought I made the point clear, but I'm going to try to make it clearer today because I don't know if I'm going to post this show necessarily on Rumble. I don't know. I'm in this interim period time where I'm just going to pick and choose, and I have some other shows that I have to put up there, and I don't want to make it confusing and have too much stuff. It just gets overwhelming for people. What happens is, people don't watch the stuff because it's too long, right? They don't understand the concept of long form, right? And they can't if it is long form, they can't understand one guy being long form. So they don't mind if I'm on and I'm interviewing a guest and doing this and I've got a producing team here, but they just can't figure the fuck out how I
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
Do everything and control everything myself. It's just because I've been in this business my entire frickin' life and I know it from its foundation. I tried to explain that before. All right? If you were around at something on the ground floor and you built it from scratch, you know everything about it. The best way in the old days, you can't do it today because the cars are, made of, chips and weird stuff, right? Plastics and molded things, right? They're literally things are poured into a mold. But in the old days, the best way to learn how to fix an engine or a transmission, right, or even to how to repair a truck, one of those old Ford trucks you'd see in an old movie on a farm, right, was basically to pretty much take it apart and build it from scratch, put it back together from scratch, because you know everything about it. You see? And that's more or less where I'm at. in other words, I understand, streaming media because I was one of the first guys to ever do it. All right. Nobody else was doing it except Tattoo and, well, our crew. We had a little crew of people, a small crew, literally less than a handful. But I mean, that was it. And so you know how to do a thing. It's the same with radio. It's like I learned radio when my engineer who was like 80 some years old, ended up in the hospital. And he was in there for a month. That pretty much they told me that was it. He was going to die in the hospital after like 3 weeks or something. Turned out he somehow recovered and came back to work. But at that point, I no longer had a use for him. But I was a month at a radio station without an engineer, and I was a general manager, and I was in the middle of hooking up a new satellite dish, modern satellite system, hooking up to Westwood One network, and changing over certain day parts. I was getting rid of my nighttime guys because they were just idiots. They were like just crapping in the bathroom and falling asleep at the microphone. So I decided to put Westwood One on the overnights and live DJs in the day. But I had to hook up all this shit, satellite stuff. Well, I had never done that kind of thing before. I mean, I'm on a ladder on top of on a satellite dish the size of a frickin' mobile home. That's how big those dishes were, for that kind of, to bring in that signals in those days to a radio station. Well, you still see them at, cable companies, internet and TV cable companies. They still use the big dishes because it's got to have that girth because it's pulling in a wider group of satellites or, whatever. All I know is I was on there and I even knew how to fix. I had one of the pieces on the end of the satellite went bad. And I even knew how to fix. I even knew what piece went bad and was able to get back up on the ladder and replace that, which was basically taking. No wonder I ended up with cancer, right? But what I'm trying to say, if you take apart a radio station, you take apart a computer, you know how it works. And in the old days, you used to be able to take apart your computers. I used to open up my computers, replace pieces, put in things, change chips, put in, cards, everything, not just like what some people change the RAM or put in a simple gaming card or some kind of thing. No, I was changing all kinds of stuff in there. And so you understand how the thing works. So I try to explain to you people about hackers and stuff. Hackers know everything. It's like, in other words, if you started with code, I had a computer. I had a Commodore computer. It was like basic programming was what it was called. I mean, so if you started out, it was like in HTML. I was in the HTML guild, they used to call it. Right, it was a loosely run organization. But the thing about it was, in those days, HTML code was pretty basic. And so it was through trial and error that we were building out the code and the capabilities of that code. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? And being able to end up, incorporating JavaScript, knowing where to place it, how to place it, and then how to basically simplify the code. And a lot of that was trial and error, and it took time, and you had to be around that in that era to do that and be the guy who experimented with it. And so what I'm trying to say is that, the longer you live, the more you know if you're involved in a thing. But even if you're not involved in a thing, you still know more because you've seen it before. They say this all the time. I don't mean to sound like I'm not like upbeat or something. You know, it's 5:01 in the morning, 5 a.m. Eastern time, okay, and the 13th of December. So, you know, you try talking to nobody. But what I'm saying is that you know things based on just even history, just life. Because you've experienced it. You've been there. You've seen it. You've watched somebody do it, or you're aware, even remotely aware of someone having done a thing. You follow what I'm saying? But at the same time, that also restricts you because your lifespan, your lifetime, only goes back to as far as you can remember, or you have some direct reference, or an individual or a person that can take you, give you firsthand experience that a thing happened. Right? So in the instance of things going on right now, it's like a lot of this stuff happened before. They just take stuff out of playbooks. And so these people that want to put everything into secret societies and stuff like that, it's like, well, you're partially right. There were people that passed down these things from generation to generation, or club member, you know, initiate to initiate, so to speak. But it's not like somebody on the outside was wanting to come in, because in the old days, and I'm not talking real old days, but just even 50 years ago, in the back of like Popular Mechanics or Omni magazine or something, in the classifieds, you could find an ad that was basically the Rosicrucians, inviting you. You know, they were like recruitment ads, inviting you to, study. Do you see what I'm saying? This wasn't, they talk about, it's a secret society. And make no mistake about it, that's the path, the portals to the Illuminati. All right? I know, I like I say, I studied this stuff. I'm not giving away any secrets. It's not like Fight Club. You can't talk about it. It was in the back of Popular fucking Mechanics, or I don't know. I sent away and got involved in it by reading it in the back of some publication. That's how I got involved and started studying it. I don't really study it anymore. I don't have the time. I wish I did, though, and I may well get back to it later on in life. Keep telling myself that. I don't read as much as I should anymore. I should probably do that instead of doing this. But what I'm saying is, so it's not, it's jealousy. It's like everything else today. It's like jealousy. It's like I talk about the then what. Then what? People who complain about stuff and always, they this, that, the other. We got to change this, do this, protest that, rally for this, whatever. Right? And I'm saying to them, then what? Right? Like I say, this then what shirt to me is starting to become, I'm realizing it might be one of my more important shirts, that I've come up with. Go to ROCKFLUX.com and get one. Because it's more of a profound statement, even though all of these things are profound. The everything you know is wrong, and we'll get into that today, is really, that's fucking profound. And like I say, I can't hold back words. I don't care. This show isn't for people who are triggered by, something stupid. And you don't know what you don't know, and game over and all that stuff. But, so A, Forget about your secret societies and all that nonsense. Forget about your politics of pop culture and the cult of personality. In other words, you're trying to turn, there's a cult of personality around some 74-year-old guy, Chris Wallace. Well, dude, you should have retired at least at 65. What's he even doing there? Guy's 74 years old. He's ready for a new adventure. See, the problem, I've criticized this for years. See, there's one thing about being old and wise. Okay? Now, where did you used to find those old wise men? You know, you go climb this mountain and they were there, and whatever. Or you'd go to see, it's like in Obi-Wan Kenobi, old Ben, right? And he had to go on this adventure to find Ben. Was in that cave, right? You mean old Ben. Ben Kenobi? Use the Force, Will, Do or do not. Be or be not. But whatever. See, people can't accept the fact that you could have make sure Santa Claus. Where's Santa Claus? There we go. That's Santa Claus, right? Santa Claus on a surfboard. Get this shirt. Let's see if we can straighten this out. Get some light on it. Everything's backwards and upside down on this shirt too. So people can't accept that you have a sense. It's like the other thing today. You can't have a sense of humor, say something goofy and stupid, and still carry on a serious conversation, right? You're supposed to be like, I'm supposed to be sitting here with like a bright white light, not all this crazy nonsense in the background, a Christmas hat on. I should be wearing a tie and be sitting on a chair, with studio lighting with somebody next to me, and we should be having this like weird, discussion with serious faces on. Might as well bring back the pipe, right? Yes, indeed. That's quite true. That happened, and it would have been 1962 at that time, right? I'm familiar with that. I'm glad you brought that up today. Chris Wallace, all right? I didn't realize, he's, his old man, is dead. I know that. But I mean, for crying out loud, 74 years old, and he's going to frickin' CNN, which is like a shell of a shell station. They're a shell station. That's what they should be doing, serving gas. You have to know when it's time to let the other guy come in, the younger guy come in and take over. And if there's no younger guy to do it, to take over, then that's the way the society goes. That's the way the cookie crumbles. Okay? There's no reason to have anybody, retire at 65. What the fuck? Retire at 62. In Europe, of course, things have changed drastically over there in the past decade or so. People used to retire 55, 57 in some European countries. And I know there's some like libertarians and pure capitalist Republicans. Oh my God, that sounds socialistic. It's your fucking life. What are you supposed to do? Just work? You see, there's a difference between being a productive member of society and then retiring, right? If a guy was a blacksmith, and particularly like, the way things have changed now, it's like me, like I said, I know people today, because they're not like this. There's some people, but not many, okay? Certainly not the ones out there. We want this. I'm like, well, then what? Get strangled by my own thing. And you don't know what's good for you or not. You know what? I'd love to have a Bluetooth headset or something like that. But it's like this tooth of mine. It's been yanked. It feels weird, but it doesn't hurt. It's just like, I don't know. Like the other tooth maybe is going to fall out now that I got a hole there. I'll lose all my teeth. Hey, it's me. Do you remember me? I was a DJ, right? Do you remember me at all? Don't you? Don't you remember me? Right? You remember me at all? Where's that thing I'm looking for? Current show. I'm trying to find it. Let me see. Are you laughing yet? Where is it? I can't find it. Where is it? I can't find it. I can't. Here it is.
And I want my favorite DJ to give everybody the word. Who's on the turntables tonight, my son?
It's me, Wolfman. It's your old friend. It's me, Wolfman.
Really funny. Really funny.
I know it wasn't funny. It's that. But, you know.
Okay.
She thinks it's funny. It's me, Wolfman. That's how I feel. And people can't accept that. Right? You can't accept it. I'm going to have a serious topic about history, biology, physics, and life extension over the next hour or so. And I just did that, right?
Really funny. Really funny.
Yeah. So what? But the point of the matter is, you know, it's me, Wolf. Anyway. It's a fucking morning show, man. Wake up and drink some coffee. You know, and my theory was correct. I'm like out of the tasty stuff, so I'm down to the Colombian. So I put in like an extra, like heaping tablespoon. And it's on the strong, a little on the strong, almost burnt side. Not really, you can't really burn something in a Walmart, you know, single, you know, a coffee. It's like my coffee warmer costs $9, and I think my Walmart coffee machine, you know, whatever maker that I bought cost about $12 or something. You know, I bought the cheapest one you could get. Makes like 3 cups of coffee, though. So far, so good. Knock on wood. It's been a couple of months. See, for those kind of prices, you just can't beat it. What I'm trying to get at is that, yeah, I'll cover all this stuff if I don't forget. Chris Wallace. Okay, so I mean, so this, you see, there's multiple levels of that kind of absurdity. I'm not going to bring a picture up again. Fuck that guy. All right. So the news is about the people in the news, right? So they're self-important, self-centered, you know, they're narcissists, right? And of course, they're narcissistic sociopaths. Okay. So the news is about them, self-centered, that whole 9 yards. That's ridiculous, insane, right? The news is about the news. And then other news organizations, as they call them, they're not news organizations, other circus, sideshow, you know, tabloids, right? Broadcast tabloids. We'll talk about other circus sideshow tabloids and their sideshow circus freaks that work for them, right? But then this guy's like 74 fucking years old, and people are going like, man, you don't understand, you know? No, I do understand. That's like when I see these CEOs of companies and the guy's like 80 years old and shit like that. It's like, no, let somebody else have a chance. How do you think we got in this? I'll tell you what, 20-some years ago, I was saying this. In fact, I think I might have been saying this 25 years ago, right? So Chris Wallace would have been like 50-ish at that time, which could have been a good age for a person, you know, for like a news person should retire in their 50s. And he should have been writing books. He should have had such an illustrious career as a journalist, his adventures, that at age 50-something, he should have been, instead of Obama someone having to go to like Martha's Vineyard or one of these, New England coastal areas where the real estate now costs like, in the tens of millions of dollars. Those should have been places where the average person could have gone, got a beach house or a house a couple blocks from the beach, right? Walk there and had that soothing, sound of the surf with their little notebook and stuff, writing their memoirs and writing a book. And a guy like a true journalist, they should have retired in their 50s and spent those years writing a couple of books. And if they had any kind of sense or sensibility, they would maybe take a trip and visit areas where they were before, and an old, fellow journalist in England and Germany and different parts of the world or different parts of the country. That's the way life used to be, adventure. And my old friend, so good to see you, my old friend. It's been so long. Glad to see you, my old friend. Right? That's what you do in life. You don't go to some care facility and just be put on prescription drugs and just wait and and have this like countdown till it's over. Right? Or in the case of this guy, what's he going to some other 74 years old and he's going, I'm going to go on a new adventure. Give somebody else a chance. So I used to say this, like I said, quarter of a century ago. I was noticing it because at those days I used to watch things like, because I had an advertising agency, and so in my back room I used to have mounted on the wall, a television. And I think a lot of times I would keep like CNBC or something, the financials, Bloomberg or CNBC. I don't know if Bloomberg was even on cable back then in our area. I think it was CNBC was it, their financial network. All right. Maria Bartiromo in the morning. Right. And they used to have a bunch of other dolls, some blonde hair, Martha McCallum. I remember her. And she, she was like these women that act like feminists, like, it has nothing to do with my skin, my hair, my face, or my body, right? Right? But that's what you were hired for. You're a Barbie doll. It's like that short little thing, I can't think of her name. She's on one of those channels. Short little thing, a little nice little compact unit, be great, great in bed, right? And she pretends like she tries to, it's almost like she goes out of her way. It's like, I'm sorry, honey, you're a sex object. And you were hired as a sex object, okay? I guess it's time to have the title card out here. But let me see if I covered everything. Did we cover everything? I don't know. Music-wise, just get Virtual Cage. Just start listening to that, because that's the key. And that's on Rumble. Listen to it on Rumble. Maybe something will happen. Like, I don't know. I'll get rumbles from it. I'm not covering La Palma anymore because I have no fucking idea what's going on with that. All right? So, anyway. See, there's nothing worse than somebody who, than these people that play and pretend they're not a thing when they are a thing, I have no idea what this red thing is. And you don't even know what I'm talking about, and I talk about it almost every show. Every object you see on the screen, all right, if you've ever worked with a program like InDesign or the old, what did they used to call that frickin' program? I used to hate it. I hate it so much I can't think of the name of it. But anyway, everything is a block. So it's either a block of text, okay, like this is a block. See, this is a block of text, right? Or this. See, I'm getting this red thing. There's some block of something that wants to be selected. It's display capture is what it is. Or there's this block of, which is an image, okay? And you can't see it, but when I select it, it's supposed to get a red thing around it. All right? And for some reason, this thing called display capture is in the foreground. I'm just telling you, this is OBS. So this is a program designed that's actually you can use on Rumble. Says they're going to incorporate it in it. It's an open source program that allows you to customize your broadcast. Now, if you've never done a broadcast before and you've never done a thing, it's not like it's not exactly, you got to know the basics. But if you know the basics, you can do all this crazy shit like I'm doing. But you have to have had the experience and you have to know what you're doing. But anyway, so yeah, I was saying a quarter of a century ago, I was watching these guys on the CNBC, in our graphics. I had a big room in the back with a bunch of computers and stuff because I used to work in there. I had an office, but at one point I moved back there because I wasn't really into the office scene, But then I had to, because there was like expectations that the creative director would have an office because these people would come in from, media companies and different representatives and stuff, and they would expect for you to be sitting behind a desk and them to sit on a chair and play that game, right? And so at the time I was doing whatever. But for the most part, I kept this area back there where I used to like to work because I could spread things out. It was a creative space. It was a studio space, kind of a graphic studio space, put it that way, an art studio, right? And everything was there, all the files and places to put things on the wall and all that shit. And I had a TV mounted on the wall. I had a sound system in there, listening to music loud and stuff. That was a creative space, right? But I can remember back there watching CNN and seeing these old-timers on there, apart from the little news girls that were just little sex toys. Let's face it, I hate to say that. But you know what I mean? Fuck, I don't care. Because, for everybody who takes offense with that stuff, like the Me Too movement and stuff, the point of the matter is, like I said this before, it's like, remember that show with those 4 girls in New York City? What was it called? Sex in the City, right? You remember the conversations they used to have while they were drinking those weird martini? What was that drink? They had a certain drink they used to drink, and then it became popular too. Some kind of drink in some, martini type glass, whatever they call this. I don't really care. You know what I'm talking about. And all they used to talk about is guys and guys' asses and guys, 6-pack abs and, and all this kind of stuff. And the one character on there, his name was Big, right? Her boyfriend, Big. It was like the name Big. Women are way worse. If you took women in numbers, okay? I mean, raw numbers, like you go to Manhattan or you go to a major market city. You go to small towns, sometimes a different story, but then women are the same all over. Men are the same all over. But I mean, you go to one of these cities and you take the percentage of women that are basically, view men as sex objects, right? And talk that trash, that kind of stuff when their girls get together, girls' night out, right? Compared to guys on a guy's night out, you know what a guy's night out is 9 times out of 10? It's not talking about, first of all, most guys I used to hang out with, believe it or not, it was always gentlemanly. I mean, when it came to your girlfriend or a girl you were out with. There might have been some dude who's like, hey, what did you do last night? Blah, 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 right? But it was, I was always brought under the code as a gentleman never tells. All right? And you may think that sounds weird, but that's just the way it was. And otherwise, on a guy's night out, these stupid guys, they'd be watching a fucking football game, man, or a hockey game or a baseball game, or drinking shots, shooting pool, or drinking around a keg and shit, laughing about goofy stuff that happened somewhere, and just guffawing and things like that. And some guys might have been, and then a couple guys might have been talking about how to fix a certain Ford pickup. That was a guy's night out. But you take, the girls' night out, and they're talking about guys, boy, does he have a nice ass, Did you see him with the shirt off the other day, or such and such on the football team? Oh, I'd like to, whatever. You see what I mean? So don't get on my case, because I know people do that. They think, oh, when I talk to these girls, like say, yeah, she's a nice, short, compact unit. I wouldn't mind giving it to her, right? Or like, or whatever. Or some Barbie doll hired for her body, right? It's like, yeah, right. What do you think you were hired on CNBC for, you stupid thing? Right? Nothing worse than somebody pretending they're not a thing that they are. You're hired for your looks. Did you ever notice the camera? They have like a couple camera setups on most news programs. Did you ever notice, like, you'll see it on Fox too? And after they even made that movie about Fox and that guy, that they get, whatever his name was, I don't really give a shit, who supposedly was making women, do things in his office or something. Well, if you turn on Fox, like, I don't know, the last time I had Fox on, I don't have TV anymore. The last time I had Fox on, it was like, after the fact that they fired that, guy. And, they would show this, like, one of these Barbie doll girls. I think the noontime girl they used to have. She had nice skin. She wasn't really skinny, type. She was like a full-figured woman, like maybe like the girl in here, Agitprop 2. But not that look, right? But one of the cameras would always slip down, and there would be a camera that would shoot an angle from the side to show her thigh. Okay? And they would do that, I don't know how many times during the course of the program. I didn't watch this stuff because I wasn't addicted to that. When I used to have it on, I would turn on a news station because I would hear there might have been a news or there was some kind of weather event coming. And so, okay, let me see what's going on. Somebody said something happened. I want to check it out. And I'll just go to the first station that, is covering something. If there's a commercial on some other station, I'll flip. I don't want to watch a commercial, right? You know what I'm talking about. There's people that, that guy's a sexist. No way, man. Women are way more sexist than men. Way more. You have no idea how guys are doofuses. Guys are there like, yeah, sports teams and all kinds of other stupid stuff, man. There's a very few guys, and only like your best friend, somebody that you really get close to, might you open up with about your girlfriend or some girl that you're like, you got a thing for. And it's usually in that instance with guys, it's respectful about the woman, I mean, at this point, what I'm doing is far from being respectful. I'm just trying to point out the absurdity and the ridiculousness of it. This is a different type of thing. This is a show criticizing culture, pop culture, and the elements of it. You understand? So I'm pointing these things out. It's not the way I live my life, at all. But somebody's got to point this stuff out. The hypocrisy. I mean, that was from yesterday, I still have that somewhere. And, I should probably replace it with this La Palma thing. Because I don't really care about, our earth changes are happening, like, it's so intense and crazy right now that I don't really know what to say about it. You know? It's like there's so much hypocrisy going on. Right? But all that said and all that kind of stuff, I just wanted to I'm going to end on this point of this, this particular, rant. Is that, okay, so you get a 74-year-old guy who should have been writing his memoirs 10, 15 years ago, basically, and given a chance for a younger person to step in and take the place. And so these old guys were hanging on back in the day when, and I used to watch the financial networks in my art studio, right? And just for the sake of it, because I was curious, that was a time, there was some reason I was doing that. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe I was watching something completely different. I don't know. But I used to think about that all the time, and I'd see these old timers. And it's like, if you guys want to invest in the market and you got, because you're so freaking much of a billionaire, you got, all access to these drugs so that, you ever notice these guys, they all die at 99 or 100 or something, right? It's just like the same people who get cured from this thing, like in 24, 36 hours, and they're back on the podium in a week. But meanwhile, these stupid circus TV tabloid stations are still telling people, oh, there's like hospitalizations are up and there's all this thing. And I'm like, yeah, but there's a fucking cure. You just showed a guy who got sick and they cured him. You just showed a girl, the press secretary of the president got sick and she got the cure and she was back up in a week. All these famous YouTube millionaires get sick. They got the thing and they're back on TV making money. You see them with your own eyes. So what are you talking about? Why are you putting people in the hospital and letting them die when there's a fucking cure for something? All right? See, that's the hypocrisy that's going on right now. And there's nothing you could do about it. Nothing you could do about it. All right? And it's like these old timers that stay in there. It's like, look, if you want to invest till the day you die and you're so lucky that you're getting a blood transfusion from like an 18-year-old blood, once every couple weeks or whatever I don't know what the limit is they have, but they have these companies that trade now. I think there's a public company that does it, right? These people give blood and then these people get a blood transfusion. The guy's 98 years old, and he gets a blood transfusion of 18-year-old, 19-year-old blood. You imagine what a rush that would be? I mean, your blood is everything. That's, cells, right? And they probably throw and have a couple other injections here and there, various other little things, right, to boot. Well, that guy's out there ready to run a fucking marathon. All right? But if they want to do that, that's fine, okay, so what? Do it. But give some younger person a chance to come up the ladder. So that's why we have so many inexperienced people that are pretending they're journalists, but they're really just news readers. And that's why television news and why I got rid of Cut the Cord has become basically just a bunch of people, show business, bunch of people reading the teleprompter and all talking about the same story over and over again. Right? Because they have no real world experience. They never went anywhere. And they're permitted to lie, right? And there's no, recourse for it. And stuff like that. So it's like, it's over. That's over. And I wasted too much time talking about that. It's over. That part is ended. It's not coming back. All right? So then what I really wanted to talk about today, and, is this idea you'll never know what you don't know, okay? And the reason that is because I touched on it a little bit earlier. You don't know what you don't know. So you're never going to know. You know, like, for example, the mud flood. Do you know what the mud flood is? Have you ever heard of that? That's like where they've like decided they were going to build some kind of like underpass or, you know, there was some space in between certain buildings and they decided to dig it up because they're going to build in another building or put some kind of something under there or put a rail line through here. And they got to go down so deep to make sure there's, you know, because of the weight of these trains or whatever the heck they're doing, the foundation of whatever they're doing is strong enough. So you have to dig down like feet, you know, like 10, 12 feet or something, you know, or something you got to put pylons down for. So they'll do a dig. And when they dig down in a lot of these areas, even in America, this is the part that you're not going to want to deal with. So they dig down alongside these buildings. And basically, most American cities are really only a couple of 100 years old at best. In fact, the further west you get, the you know what I mean? Those cities shouldn't even exist. It's like there's the stories about San Francisco. Think about that. That would be a very young city. And even though it burnt like 100 some years ago, you know, they had that, right? The point is, the idea is there should not be anything under there. No previous city. Ruins. Right? Well, what they have found in various places where they've done this, and it's like they're digging up the entire world. But they've done this, like, you know, this has been done worldwide and even all over this country because there's constant, no, people are build crazy, you know. Well, they find out that what they thought was the first floor of a building, you know, next to this place where they're digging, is they go down and there's like another floor down there. And it's not a basement. It's got windows and like a front door entrance, as if it was buried under. They call it the mud flood because it's just like covered over, and they've used like the second floor now has become the first floor. And there's these hidden floors underground. And, you know, I was telling somebody on the phone yesterday, I have this I remember as a kid where I grew up, because I used to work my first job. And this is what I was talking about. These old guys, they don't know when to quit. It's because, first of all, maybe they haven't worked long enough. Like my father had a printing shop. So even as kids, we went over there and helped out. Now, granted, that wasn't hard labor. It was just like kiddie stuff, help put booklets together, and it was printing business. But I got my Social Security number with two of my friends at age 16, right? Right when we turned 16, because that's when you were allowed to get a Social Security card. And you had to have a Social Security card to get a legitimate job, Social Security number. And so we went down to Social Security office and we got our Social Security cards. And I got a job working at Rite Aid department store or whatever. And that was down in the downtown area of the town I lived in. And I used to be like one of the first jobs, you know, you get the crappiest jobs when you first start out. You know, you start out with a compactor, which I didn't mind because, you know, just imagine a retail store. How many boxes? Think yourself, you know, I think about it myself. How many things you order from Amazon or different places and how many boxes you got? It's such a pain, right? I got to flatten these boxes out. I stack them up. It's a good thing I have a garden. I lay them down to cover the ground. But then I'm stuck with these like messed up boxes. I try to take everything off them and hope they're going to eventually just like disintegrate or something. But, you know. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Those kind of stores used to have like a trash compactor, box compactor, because they would get so many boxes of stuff. Right. And so my job, I used to work like 2 days a week when I was going to high school or something. You go in for, I don't know how many hours. After you go in after school and work till maybe 8 or something like that. I don't know. I don't, or 7. I don't know what it was. Maybe you work 4 hours, maybe you get 8 to 10 hours a week, whatever. $1.65 an hour, right? But it was money, who cared? And that was your first job. And so I was in the back room compactor. And then eventually you'd move up to stocking shelves. And then later on you'd work the cash register. And I moved up to that, did that. And then eventually I ended up getting a job at a radio station or something. But I remember working in that basement or in that back room. And, the store was still open till like 9. So the boss is in the front, working the register, hanging out up there. And people are stocking shelves and all that stuff. And there'd be lulls in the action. The people stocking the shelves would bring back boxes and I'd be putting them in the compactor. And there was always a pile left from the day before. There's plenty of work to do, but sometimes you'd have a lull. And I remember I used to explore because there was like this back area and there was this thing. And I remember going down some stairs at one time and looking, and there was like this whole underworld under there. And it even crossed the city, like the main street of the city, in across to the other side and stuff. There were like passageways and stuff like that. It was all buried underneath this town, but some of these passageways were still like opened and stuff. It was weird. I never thought about much of it, and I only have flashes of it now. But having seen some of these digs, these archaeological digs, and people more than just one or two people talking about this. It's a very interesting phenomenon. They call it the mud flood. And then there's this other guy I watched who was talking about this as far as World's Fairs, that they were having these World's Fairs since, back in, centuries ago. And they were showcasing all this stuff, and they would show as if they were old buildings, and they would claim they were replicas of old buildings built poorly. And then after the World's Fair was over, they would destroy all the World's Fair grounds. And sometimes maybe one or two things they would leave or something. And what this one presenter of this documentary was trying to get across to people was that this was the transition between they were destroying an old higher civilization, and they were taking certain technologies that they wanted to add, but they were using this to destroy the remnants of the previous civilization. And like things like the Roman Empire and stuff really, and that they messed with time. That's why I say it's like 15. What the? These wires. That it's 1521. It's not really 2021. It's like they changed the years. You have no idea, right? See, you really don't know what year it is. So the Roman Empire existed, but there's this missing gap of time, okay? That could be like, Dark Ages or 500 years. And I know there's been people who've tried to prove this, that, the other, but they only try to prove it through certain buildings and certain kinds of things like that. They don't have any proof, right? It's just like the ancient history and stuff. I know this sounds really woo-woo and crazy and stuff. But what I'm trying to say, you don't know what you don't know, and everything you know is wrong. Or it could be. Right? See, you have no idea. You say, well, I read it in a book. But all the books have been rewritten. Right? Education became an indoctrination system, about 100 some years ago. All right? It started to be controlled. You know, the type of power players, like even the guys like Hearst that controlled the media back then, were just as bad as the media people who control the media now. Right? They fabricated stories for their own purposes. Remember, they nominalized Tesla, Nikola Tesla, right? Most of Edison, it was Tesla who helped Edison figure out shit. And Edison never even paid Tesla. Like, he ripped Tesla off. You should read up on that thing. Tesla solved some problems for Edison. He did it for money because he wanted some money to set up his own research center. And Edison never paid him. And then Edison was out electrocuting elephants in public forums, trying to push his DC current. But today, AC current, which is the electricity we use, that was invented by Nikola Tesla. And there was this great battle between Tesla and Edison over AC versus DC. Do you know that? Some people know that. A lot of people don't know that. And so today everybody goes, Thomas Edison, he invented the radio. No, he didn't. He didn't invent the radio. All right? Thomas invented the light bulb. No, he didn't. Thomas invented a phonograph. No, he didn't. Thomas Edison invented, generators and all this. No, he didn't. Thomas Edison was a fucking thief. It was a con man. It was just like fucking Ford was a fucking dickhead and a Nazi, right? People don't even know that shit. Because you don't know what you don't know. And you don't know history. You know what you've been told. Right? That's why the Vatican archives are locked up. Like, the Vatican is the Roman Empire. It's nothing to do with any kind of religion or God. Right? The Pope is not like anything to do with God. The Pope is the Roman emperor. You didn't even know that, right? Rome. Why do you think they still call it Rome? Rome, the Club of Rome, right? The Jesuits. This is like their army. These people that do shit and stuff. People don't even understand that. Oh, you talking, that is heresy. Well, believe me, a lot of the other so-called religions are all gamesmanship too. All right? It's all manipulation. You've been manipulated, controlled, and, messed with your entire life. Well, what about the Dead Sea Scrolls? Yeah, that's some interesting stuff there. But the point of the matter is, are you in charge of the Dead Sea Scrolls? Have you studied, Aramaic, ancient, Greek? Can you read, are you able to look at the Rosetta Stone and make sense of like those three languages and how that is like some kind of cipher, No, you don't know that. Can you read Sumerian, those little triangular little stick little markings they've made on those things? You can't do that. It's like that guy, he's dead now, Sitchin, who wrote all that stuff about, the Anunnaki and stuff like that. Well, Sitchin took a lot of liberties, all right? I mean, some of the stuff Sitchin said was like, the translations weren't, were fairly decent. But he was one of the few guys that basically, he was educated in translating, these ancient languages and stuff. But he took creative liberties and novelized a lot of these stories. And to this day, when you watch shows like on the History Channel, like I don't know if it's still even on, but Ancient Aliens and stuff. I'm sure the reruns are on with the guy with the hair, right? I mean, they'll still quote him. But the point is, you know, he was novelizing stuff. You don't know what you don't know. And we have bits and pieces of things, and we've dug up certain things, but we don't really know the dating on them. You know, carbon dating isn't real. It's like these cave paintings, you know. In many instances, when those cave paintings in France were discovered and they were saying, look, at ancient man was drawing these incredible things. At the time, the people were saying, they're all fakes. You know, those are recent drawings. You know. Well, you didn't know that. You never heard that before. Is it true? Is it not true? Well, you can't argue the point. How would you know? I can't sit here and argue with you either about it. But I've heard the other side of many stories that you haven't, is what I'm saying. See, as a researcher myself, I retired early, unlike that stupid news guy, whatever the fuck his name is. I already fucking forgot his name. What's his name? Wallace? Mike Wallace? Is it Mike Wallace or is his dad Mike Wallace? He's who? Chris Wallace. He's Chris Wallace. See, unlike an idiot like him, I retired. And so I spent my time researching and trying to grab as much information as possible. And I was also interested in this in an early age, so that I acquired the books. I also had an uncle who was a teacher, was actually a military guy. He was involved in some of the nuclear, not some of them. He was an officer who was present out in Nevada and those areas where they were doing the nuclear tests back in the 50s and stuff. He eventually died. He had cancer in practically every part of his body. Because it takes, see, that's the thing about cancer. It like, you know, so you go in and you like think, you know, I've said this to like even family members of mine, and they like laugh it off. I'll even say it, my brother, because, you know, he doesn't watch this show, but he pisses me off sometimes. I'm like, well, I didn't want to get this. They gave me this extra dental x-ray, or they gave me like 2 chest x-rays. I didn't ask for them. I didn't want them. Right? You're like, oh, that's not going to bother you. And I'm like, you know, you don't have any fucking clue, man. Radiation is a thing that builds up over time. I should have told him and reminded him about my uncle. When he was in the hospital bed at the end of his life, there was like nothing they could do for him. They said he was like, his entire body had cancer in it. Like it caused from radiation, from exposure years earlier. Years earlier. You know, when he was present at the atomic blast sites. But when he retired, you know, from the military, he went to California and became a teacher. He was a teacher. He was a very educated man. And he came back east right around the time I was in high school. Late, you know, what you would call junior high. We never had junior high. We had grade school. You were in 7th grade, 8th grade, then you went to high school. But he came back around that time, because I remember I was hanging around down my dad's print shop, and he had a place not around the corner from it or something like that. You know, this is just a Tony Caravan story. It doesn't really mean anything to you, but it's...
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
It's important that it's firsthand, because you have to understand, a story is not a story if you don't have firsthand evidence. Well, he moved back, and when he moved back, he got an apartment. He was he had been married earlier, all right, and I believe he had a daughter. I'm pretty sure he has a daughter. I'm not really close with my family because I don't really mess around on YouTube too much, and I've had some correspondence with some of these people, but it's like I apologize, and I don't know if they're watching. They will watch these things randomly or not. I doubt it. But anyway, I think I was in touch with his daughter once or twice through Facebook, many, many years ago. But he was divorced or whatever. Or I don't know what the situation was, so I can't even speak to it. But he came back by himself, all as I know. And he rented a small apartment above a corner little grocery store. They used to have these little corner grocery stores. And he used to sometimes take me over across the street to an ice cream parlor. And he used to buy me a banana split. And he used to sit there and he used to love doing that. He thought that was great. And I was like, I love banana split. That's like this monstrous thing, right? And I'm a kid. And he'd just be sitting there probably having a cup of coffee or something like that. But he was so happy to see me, like my eyes lit up and me eating that banana split. Wow, I can't believe this, right? But he had a small apartment. He was a single guy. He was retired. This is a guy retired from the military, then spent years, how many years after out of the military as a teacher, and then came back to his hometown where most of his family was. He had a lot of brothers. My father's side, there were a lot of brothers. And he decided he was going to retire there. He may well have already known he didn't. But he seemed healthy for a number of years. He didn't die until I was in like a senior in high school, I think. But, in the grand scheme of things, I don't know, maybe he was only back a half dozen years or so, or something like that. Could have been longer. Whatever the case may be, he got a bachelor's apartment above this store. And my father was running the print shop around the corner, right? And so he had no place. He had books. He had boxes of books. And so, it was the family printing business, basically. I mean, he was family. So he had these boxes of books stored at my father's, at the family print shop. Well, my father it was his business at that point. But I mean, he had these books stored there. And they were all along like these shelves towards the front and stuff. And I used to go to that's where I went after school, and then I would get a ride home. I would do any odd jobs, deliveries for my dad, stuff like that. But I mainly would just sit at my dad's like desk that was piled up with stuff while he would work. And then I'd come home with my dad, for dinner, get a ride home. And whatever, if there was work to do, I'd do work. But a lot of times there was nothing for me to do. Or I'd be sitting there at his desk and he'd say, here, run this package over to, such and such. And I would just grab it and deliver some print job, some letterheads to some, doctor or something. Prescription pads or something goofy, whatever. And, but staring at me, and I wasn't a homework type of guy because I never really had to do homework. I went to class, I went to school, I just skated through school because it wasn't really that much of a challenge for me. I could basically, listen, be present at the class, maybe just read over the book a little bit, and I would pass the test. So homework wasn't like, I never had that problem. My parents said, make sure you do your homework or something, because I never got bad grades. I mean, my grades were never that bad, So I'm sitting there. I wasn't worried about doing homework. And if I had homework to do, it probably took me like 20 minutes to do it at my dad's desk. And so here's these boxes of books from a guy from a previous generation who was a teacher, an educator, a guy who was in the military and stuff, and who had acquired certain books and stuff. Right? And so I'd look through these books. He didn't care. I mean, because he would stop in. That was, he lived around the corner. And what's a guy going to do? He's retired. So it's like, yeah, sometimes he took me to ice cream, maybe once, not all the time, but once, once every couple of weeks or something, maybe. I think he like took me over to the YMCA, got me involved in like some kind of youth athletic type of program, which I did for a little while, but I wasn't too into that. And, or sometimes he would just stop by and talk to, because my other uncle, two of my uncles worked in that print shop. It was my dad and two of his other brothers, and then this uncle who was another brother. So he'd come over and, those guys would be doing their work and he'd come over and talk, to his brothers, and they all had a cordial relationship. That family was a good family. It was a good family to grow up in, I was very fortunate towards the end when I had come back from my travels years later, though that uncle had passed on, that one of my other uncles who had lived out and had started a newspaper, I think in another town or something, another uncle who had done very well for himself somewhere, they moved all over. There was like a big family. I don't know how many, I couldn't even tell you how many brothers exactly. I don't want to, guess. There were like two sisters and something like 6 brothers or something. I mean, it was something like that. It was a big family on my father's side. But anyway, when I came back from my travels years later, okay, I'm like in my late 30s now, or in my 30s or something. And one of the uncles who was getting very old decided, since most of the family had still lived there in that town, he was going to hold what they call a family reunion. People used to do those kinds of things. You don't see an awful lot of that stuff everywhere anymore. People still have them, but it's not as widespread and common as it used to be. And he rented this hotel room like somebody would rent for like a wedding reception or something like that. And everybody was invited, and I went to it, and here were all these people and cousins and people people I'd never seen, and a couple uncles I just had no recollection from. We had home movies, so some of the faces looked familiar because I'd seen them in a home movie or something, maybe, or a picture in some kind of thing, a photo album. And I know the story's getting on, and you're wondering what's the point to this. But anyway, so this uncle used to come by, and he didn't care that I would look through these books, and I guess he even encouraged it. And so he obviously, and I never really thought about it until later on in life, but that he had this inquisitive mind, and the type of books that were in there were very interesting. They were like, history of the world and philosophy and interesting kinds of things that, weren't commonplace, and certainly stuff that wasn't like at my school library and stuff that I was exposed to. So it broadened my horizons and got me thinking, and I would sit there and read, and I was always interested in like learning stuff, right? And so what I'm trying to get at is that, and that's the story, that's it. There's no punchline to it or anything of the kind, other than that was an introduction, And also growing up in a print shop, meaning that in a printing company, you print things. You're printing people's papers, memoirs, booklets, all kinds of information, right? We used to print something, we printed for like the Army, something called Zero Defects Program Manual. There was some kind of Army booklet that was about how to have perfection in the military and how not to make a mistake, right? It was an interesting thing. It was called, I still remember to this day, it was called Zero Defects Program. And it was a manual, and we printed it in our print shop. And it was all of these things that you would do so that you could not make a mistake, right? Because a mistake in the military, particularly in those days, pre-computer type of days and automate, that kind of stuff, it was up to the human mind, the human being, the soldier, right? to not make, you could not, a mistake could cost lives, could cost, everything. So anything I would get my hands on like that, I'd be very interested in reading. And so in printers were some of the most intelligent people, or well-read people. I wouldn't, intelligence might be pushing it. But at the very least, they were intelligent because they had the skills. And this even would go back to, earlier times. Because you had to input the data on a machine in those days, typeset it. And it was like, it would be just like people who would type a book today and stuff like that. But I mean, I do my own books. And obviously there are people that typeset books for people. But some people just write their book on their computer and then they send it to the publisher and maybe it's edited and spell checked and thing like that. But there's not as many people, the whole printing operation and stuff, they're not necessarily involved in that. There's not a whole class of people in every town in America. And there were multiple printers even in our town, right? I knew a guy, went to school with a guy who was the same age as me, whose father owned another print shop in that town, who later on I used to drink with when I came back again from my travels. And we were friends. We used to hang out a little bit at Chamber of Commerce get-togethers. I had an interesting life. I forget all these things half the time. So what I'm trying to say is that's another way of transfer of knowledge is from person to person, right? Or firsthand, right? And someone who acquired a particular volume, all right, that may not have been corrupted, may not have been destroyed. And make no mistake about it, many a book was destroyed or re-edited. Things were edited out of them, particularly books that were used in schools and stuff like that. Okay? And so you don't know what you don't know. And in many instances, for the average person, everything you know is wrong. And as hard as that is for you to understand and accept, it's the truth. Is anybody else bothered by the fact that the white thing on my hat interferes with that girl? Excuse me, of the hiccups. That's better. You can still see her. So anyway, I'm sorry, excuse me. It's just like 6:08 a.m. I'm going to walk to the grocery store today, I decided. Because I need the exercise. I haven't really left the house. It's like wintertime. Yesterday was like, gale force winds, rain the other day. Or was it rain the other day? Yesterday, gale force winds. I don't know. Those same storms they had in Kentucky, that wind was blowing here. There's a wire. I got to frickin' call the electric company because the psycho lady next door is oblivious to it and she doesn't give a shit, I don't think. But there's a wire that looks electric wired from the pole that looks like it's loosened from her house. And it's dangling only about so far from my porch roof. And I'm worried about, we're supposed to get, these winds are coming back again next week. And so I'm afraid that thing's going to hit my porch and break or tatter or sparkle and my fucking house is going to burn down. So I got to figure out how to do that. Call the electric company. They better not try charging me for it, And it'll be confusing and stuff. I really don't want to do it, because the people are so fucked up. Like if you call them, well, what's your name? What's your address? Well, no, it's a neighbor. I don't want to be involved in it. You see what I mean? But it's like, I don't want my house to burn down either. And then they're going to say, well, your neighbor called in and I'm having this battle with this person because she's a psycho. But I mean, I noticed this wire like loose, and I'm worrying about, Jesus, we're supposed to get a blizzard next week or something crazy like that. The weather is screwed up because our magnetic field's messed. And the earth is spinning around this freaking dynamo thing, and the sun's magnetic field is screwed up. Our magnetic field's weak. And so, you know, and you're getting your dips in the jet stream and stuff. This has nothing to do with, like I say, CO2 or any man-made anything. We don't control the speed of the earth, the speed of the winds, or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? The magnetic field of the planet is not controlled by a chemical reaction, by pollution or something. You understand? These are scary times. The planet is going through these weird changes. It's earth changes. It's why this channel is called ROCKFLUX, and what it'll be dealing with primarily next year as this show evolves. We get through this year and go to a new format on a new platform and Rumble. All right? That's what it'll be, ROCKFLUX. And that's what this is all about. And I'm trying to give you a little prelude to it, despite the fact that it's goofy. And probably now that I'm involved in more of some serious parts of this, because the goofiness in the beginning, you know, like I say, people don't have a concept of they can't accept a full human being. You know what I mean? Like somebody who has like personality and a broad range of ideas, of ways of communicating, somebody that could laugh, hilariously, or, be a serious person, right? Our society doesn't seem to get that, to grasp that. And it's too bad, because that's personality. That's what it's all about, right? Do you want somebody to be a robot, a droid, a drone, this, that, the other? If you look closely at this girl in this picture, this agitprop, if you look at the girl on the far left versus the girl on the far right, it almost looks like the girl on the far left has a slightly different expression on her face than the girl on the far right, slightly. But it's the exact same photo. It's just one of those weird things. I don't know if you've noticed that or not. So this planet is going through these crazy earth changes right now. Rock flux. It's a rock in a state of flux. Okay? And I've talked about this 12,000 year cycle, all right? But there's these other people, when I started out talking about this mud flood, which is how I got on that whole thing about you don't know what you don't know, and unless you have a direct connection, and then me tying some personal family connection to an individual who happened to have books, who was a teacher, who experienced certain things in life. And you have to have some kind of personal connection to a thing or a volume or something so that you know that it is real and it has not been edited, changed, or something. You see? And that is becoming harder and harder to do. And there still are some, you could probably in certain areas find some rare bookstores. And obviously you can't get in the Vatican. They've locked up all that stuff. So we're not allowed to know. Okay, why would you lock up a book? People say, well, they're fragile or something. Okay, well then why, with all the billions of dollars that you've raped from the world and taken from people and done nothing with it, right? Do you know they have these things called like Catholic? Somebody once said to me, this is years ago, when I was like on unemployment or something like that, and that's why I ended up getting money from the community service, like basically what you would call a welfare, like to get some kind of food stamp thing at one point, because unemployment, was a ripoff. They stole your first and second check or something like that. And then they give you like a fraction of the money. Not like today where these people were making more money on unemployment than they were when they had a job. Well, there was one time, it was just one time in my life where I was on unemployment for a short period of time, right? 26 weeks. And they were giving me like nothing, next to nothing. I couldn't live on. I couldn't pay my bills. I was getting behind on my mortgage, the whole 9 yards. And people say, go to Catholic Charities. They'll give you money to help you pay that bill so you don't, lose, they don't turn your power off or your water, right? So, with much, I really didn't want to call Catholic Charities. But I'm going to, okay. I have to. I got this thing. They're going to turn your water and sewer on. And if your water and sewer is turned off, here's something nobody understands. Then your house is immediately condemned. Like, they really don't want people owning houses and living in houses. People don't know that. They jump on it. If your water and sewer, if you no longer have water and sewer in your house, the next step is your house gets a thing stamped on it, condemned. Right? So anyway, so I call Catholic Charities, and they say, well, the most we can give you is like $20. This is the fucking Vatican. This is a place of untold riches of the world, right? These people dress in, gold. Everything's golden, right? It's a palace, right? It's the remnants of the Roman Empire. A lot of people don't even understand that. The Pope is really the Roman Empire, right? Emperor. But it's this golden palace, right? Oh, we'll give you $20. Forget it, man. I'll get by. And I got by, and I ended up figuring shit out. Catholic Charities. I don't even know how I got on that. Lost my train of thought.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
But anyway, so I guess what I'm trying to talk to you about is firsthand knowledge. And that everything has been warped. You've been manipulated. You've been lied to. You are controlled. And they're still doing it. And just like CNN and this Wallace guy who doesn't want to retire and give a younger person a chance to work their way up the ladder and learn and discover, right? He's going to hang in there till he basically dies, right? It's the same for Biden and Trump, those guys. I'm sorry, man. We don't need these people that are that old. Biden is, at least was showing signs of dementia. Trump seemed to be like very, very lucid, right? But still. And then they had Hillary Clinton, and she was like, she was losing it. You got Nancy Pelosi, doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. Another old bag, right? I'm sorry, people. The understand is there's thing called retirement. And I guess what I was trying to talk about, part of that idea about me working for my father when I was young, going there after school and doing little odd jobs, which wasn't really work. But then getting my Social Security card at age 16 and getting a job at 16. Do you understand? By the time I was 36, I worked 20 years. By the time, I was 46, I worked 30 years. By the time I was 56, I worked 40 fucking years. Okay? That's enough of your life to give to work. Now, fortunately, I was lucky that many of those jobs were, some of those jobs I was self-employed, but many of those jobs were jobs in fields that I enjoyed, such as radio and entertainment and filmmaking and all that stuff. And they were experiential jobs, such as working for Columbia University and traveling around the world and doing different things, working in Washington, D.C. and learning, living in Capitol Hill and stuff like that. But that's my illustrious career and why I wrote 10 books, to share some of that stuff and why I do these shows. But what I'm saying is, at that point, once you work 40 years, people should retire at age 55, pretty much. In my case, it should, like 56. You work 40 years, live your life, and do some living while you still can live. While you still can make love to a beautiful woman and fully enjoy the experience without having a heart attack and actually being able to keep it up. Okay? Well, you can still maybe have a drink without, suffering cirrhosis of the liver. Or you could still eat, a treat or go out to a meal and have something without getting type 2 diabetes or something. Do you understand the servitude that they put people into? But at the same token, what I'm trying to explain is that that's the way it was. You got, you worked at 16. You got a job when you were 16. Some people used to get married, at age 18 and 16, or people would get married right out of high school. And there's nothing wrong with that. People who chose careers or vocations in certain fields that, that were non-academic. I say this often, and I'm still stick with it. If I were able to go back in time, I wouldn't have gone to college. I would have stayed and probably worked at my father's print shop, and I think I still would have went on my adventures. It's like that degree and the stuff I learned in college did me no good. The only job I wouldn't have been able to get would have been Columbia. I wouldn't have been able to work for Columbia University because without having, because it was a university. So without having a college thing on your resume, I couldn't have gotten that job. But, I could have lived without that job. That was fun. That was New York. But I worked in New York prior to that at a publishing company. So it didn't, I already had my New York experience, and I could have gone, that just happened to be, that was an interesting experience working at Columbia. But no, I really wouldn't have gone, I sometimes say I might have quit. There was a point, when I had the principal who ended up getting me that radio job senior year, I was so fed up with my high school, like beginning of senior year, that I walked out of one of my classes and I ended up just sitting and the principal said, I didn't have to go to back to that class. And I used to sit in the main office and I was the guy who would like take a note to a classroom or something because they knew I couldn't get along. This one teacher was such a, ridiculous person that I basically couldn't deal with him. It was her, actually. But I probably would have quit, but that principal got me a job working at a local radio station my senior year. And so I stayed there and finished out high school. But I probably would have just quit, because they kicked me out once because my hair was too long or something weird like that too and stuff. It's like, fuck you, The point was I've always been my own man, do what I do. Your brain is your brain. You can learn and you can read. You don't need some moron teaching you something. I hate to say that, but it's the truth. And especially today, do you think anybody's learning anything? It's like I say with these doctors and these interns, they don't really learn anything till they go to the hospital and then they start being exposed in the emergency room into these real things. Right? And it was the veteran nurses that were teaching them. But now all the veteran nurses are quitting, retiring early and stuff like that. And these doctors are like I told you the story. I went to the hospital and it was 2 young girls. I mean, they were like girls you'd see, like freshmen and college type age girls. And the doctor was green, fresh out of medical school, carrying a backpack like some guy who was still in college. And I'm talking, and I got like a serious, hey, let's diagnose this thing, man. What the fuck? I just rode a half hour in an ambulance to get here. Right? I got better things to do. What's going on? And pretty much, they didn't say it, but they might have said like, I don't know. I mean, they could have, if they would have said that, it would have been exactly the same thing as what came out of their mouth, just a different way of expressing it. I don't know. I mean, that's pretty much that's what I took away from that visit. So anyway, yeah, so I went on an adventure and I learned life firsthand. And the point of the matter is you don't know what you don't know. And I didn't get a chance to really get in depth into this thing. But what I'm trying to tell you is that you don't know what time it is. Like I did a show once. Does anybody really know what time it is? You don't really know what date it is. And you can't argue with me on that. But I can't argue with you on it either. Okay? You don't know what you don't know. That applies to me too. Okay? But the idea is that unless you have firsthand knowledge, and you don't, and you say, well, my grandma, yeah, if you're fortunate, one of those people, like my grandfather used to tell me some stories when I was young, and I was a listener because I was the type of person I'd like to listen. And I spent some time with my grandfather. I remember once when my grandmother was in the hospital for something. She came back, after a week or so and stuff. But I stayed there. They said, you stay with your grandfather while your grandmother's in the hospital, right? Keep him company. And I basically was there. And he talked, and he used to tell me stories and stuff, and give me little tips about life and stuff. He was an interesting character, And I never forgot a lot of that stuff, because it was one-on-one. But the point is, I never met my great-grandfather. Now, some people might have, and maybe they might have had a story that goes back to that. And there are some oral traditions that go down through certain indigenous people and certain things like that. But, the longer the story is passed down, the more chances of that story being, just slightly interpreted, right? And we can't trust hardly any books, right, at all because of the translations. And unless you're a translator, see, the things they should have taught people in school, and I'm going to end this shortly, is that what you really needed, and they used to in the very beginning, but that they stopped that, is that people should have learned to read like Latin and Greek, right? Should have learned about, ancient world history and different stuff before. And they used to in the early part of the 20th century, before the school systems had become controlled by school boards, and they became indoctrination centers and stuff. When all this stuff happened, like all the world wars and all that stuff, that was all pre-planned. All that was everything that happened from the time that the central bankers took over and created fiat money and all that stuff. The world changed at that point. And everything changed, and everything is wrong from that point onward. Except little isolated pockets, or if you were fortunate enough to have someone who passed down certain things. And people now are like that, are very few and far between. And like a guy like me who has some knowledge to share with you, and I'm sharing it to you, but I'm also kind of fun-loving and goofy and stuff, so I guess that's not, well, we can't accept that from him because he did that thing before, right? Oh, that can't be serious. You see what I mean? Well, let me tell you, a fun-loving kind of person goofing around and doing stuff like that, I'm more likely to believe them and listen to them than I am someone who's like trying to put on some pretension wearing this Beau Brummel suit and tie and trying to come at me with some establishment rule, governmental EU, right? Bureaucratic corporatocracy, government traditional, like, follow the line type of person. Well, think about it. Everything you know is wrong. Everything you know is wrong. And you don't know what you don't know. Think about that. Do some investigation into it. There's some people that cover this topic and it's half-assed. They don't really, they've got, you could poke holes in certain things they talk about. But if you really, really research and you really look at it, it's like anything else you look on the internet or YouTube or something. You don't take one word for it or one thing. You go to about 12 different places before you make your decision. I mean that. And I used the example of like when I was looking at antibiotics and stuff like that. The first 10 places I went to were saying, you can't eat anything. Or eat this, don't eat that. Don't do this, don't do that. And it wasn't until the last one, actually, it wasn't until I eventually went to my family doctor who said, oh, you're taking amoxicillin. You could eat anything with that. I'm like, thanks for telling me now. I just like totally destroyed my microbiome for the past week. Trying to listen to the internet and Mayo Clinic and shit. Google is bullshit. It's like this thing, this last Bitcoin. I don't think we're going to do Bitcoin anymore. I'll get rid of the girl. See you later. Nice tits. Look at the results up here. 1,700,000,000 results. Now, how could there be 1,700,000,000 results for one simple question? What is the price of Bitcoin today? And this one goes beyond the day. This gives you the entire history of Bitcoin. That's the only result necessary. See, Google is full of shit. It's crazy. It's just ads. It's bullshit. It's all bullshit. Everything you know is fucking wrong, man. Anyway, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I don't want to yell because good morning. It gives me a fucking toothache. Thanks for watching. Visit TonyCaravanLive.com or RockFLUX.com. I'm also on Rumble, but if you go to RockFLUX.com, you can click on my Rumble site and listen to my song Virtual Cage or TonyCaravanLive.locals.com. But I don't think people figure out how to work it. You know what, Dave Rubin? I don't think people figure out your interface is fucked up. And the interface on Rumble's kind of fucked up too. Get my book, Then What? Buy a shirt, holiday shirt, whatever. I think today's the last day to guarantee delivery before the holidays. All right. And the holidays, buy holidays. There's 3 holidays, at least 4 holidays left. You got Christmas. You got Boxing Day. You got Kwanzaa. You got New Year's. And you've got Orthodox Christmas or whatever. So you got a shitload of holidays left. So, but before Christmas,